I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Vodacy Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and I am really excited about today's episode. We've got Rod Khleif here joining us. And if you have been around real estate investing at all, and you haven't been living under a rock, you've heard of Rod. And so Rod is big into the multifamily space. But you guys know that I don't typically have a lot of guests outside of the short-term rental world. And one thing that I was telling Rod before we started this is there's no shortage of gurus and experts and advisors out there right now. But what there is a shortage of are experts and advisors who have been around long enough to see some ups and some downs. And Rod is definitely one of those guys that's been around. I'm not going to go into a huge bio. Rod's going to tell his story to you, and it's a pretty amazing ride. And then we're going to get into a lot of fun things about what some of the opportunities are, some of the challenges coming that we're looking at ahead of us right now. And so, Rod, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having me, brother. Yeah, we're going to talk about this upcoming recession as well, because
absolutely,
you need to know about it. And I actually think the fact that you're in this space is a good thing, and we'll talk about why.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining us. And so, man, let's just, you and I are just going to have a great conversation. But before we get started, can we just, let's dive into the deep end and let's hear how this all started. I know you've been around for a while and love to hear your story and what brought you to where you're at today.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I am old as dirt. So, but I'm going to go way back. So I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old, was born in the Netherlands, wooden shoes, windmills. And it came over here with my brother, Albert, my mother's Vansha. We ended up in Denver, Colorado. We really struggled initially. In fact, I remember eating expired food because that's all we could afford. So we went to an expired food store. We drank powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it's better than it sounds. And I mean, not as good as it sounds. And then, I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I finally got disgusted and lied about my age of Burger King when I was 14 so I could flip burgers and buy my own clothes. And I'm sure you've got listeners that have had it harder than I did, or maybe even have it harder now. But luckily, I knew I wanted more. And my mom had an incredible work ethic. So my mom babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And she was a bit of an entrepreneur. With her babysitting money, she invested in the stock market successfully and also invested in real estate. Well, her first real estate acquisition was the house directly across the street from us. She bought from a family named the Jewels when I was about 14 for about $30,000. And when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep that had gone up in value that much. I'm like, you just made 20 grand. You didn't do anything? Screw college. I'm getting into real estate. So I went and got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18, which you could do back then with education. They got smart. Now you need a little experience to be a broker, but I was a broker. I could have my own office. Well, my first year in real estate, I made about $8 grand. My second year, maybe 10 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was pretty decent change.
As a 21-year-old, by the way. Yeah.
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 And actually at 20 at that point.
20. Okay.
But so what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10X my income? Well, what happened was I was smart enough to go work for a broker, a guy, and I dated his daughter. And he taught me or started the conversation around the fact that 80 to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and your psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical stuff that we talk about on our podcast. So fast forward to today, I've owned 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term. I own thousands of apartment units now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so big, I could barely fit it through a freaking door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God of the universe will give you a nice little smack. Well, that was 2008. I lost $50 million conservatively in 2008. And so, what I'm known for talking about, Shawn, on my podcast, which I'm blessed to say just broke 13 million downloads. Super freaking excited.
Wow, congrats. That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Just had our 700th episode a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, I'm known for talking about the mindset it took to have 50 million to lose in the first place. And then the mindset, maybe as important or even more important, the mindset it took to recover. Yeah. There were people that killed themselves, I hate to say it, back in 2008, 9, and in the Great Depression for losing less, proportionately. But so happy to drill down on that a little bit before we, talk about the state of the market, if you like.
I love to. Yeah. And those of our listeners that have been around me long enough, I'm huge into the mindset as well. You just can't navigate and succeed without it. And it does all the heavy lifting for us. And to your point, like I love Churchill's definition of success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Well, that's easier said than done, right? That's tough. And when you go through the hiccup that you went through, to not say, love it.
Yeah, I just if you know,
Churchill
guys,
guy. Yeah, he's those of you listening, not watching. We got the Churchill quote up.
It was never ever give up. Because he helped England through World War II. Anyway, sorry I distracted you there, brother.
No, that's great. Love it. But the point is, I would love to unpack that a bit and love to riff on that a little bit with you because I think that's really important.
Yeah. So people ask me, how'd you recover from losing $50 million. And let me back up. So I've got a boot camp coming up. If you want to learn multifamily, I'll tell you how to come real cheap and it's a hell of a deal, but it's at the end of July. But if you come, what you'll see is the first thing we do for an hour and a half is goal setting. I call it goal setting on steroids, because how the hell do you get anything if you don't know what it is? You got to know what you want with clarity, and then why you want it, because you've got to create what Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich calls a burning desire. You got to want it, because that's how you push through fear. That's how you push through limiting beliefs that you may have. That's how you get uncomfortable, and a lot of people are comfortable, and the comfort zone's a nice warm place, and nothing freaking grows there, right? So, and so you've got to know what it is you want and why you want it. And so that's the first thing that I did back in 2008 and 2009 was I reassociated with what I wanted, because it would have been very easy to focus on the pain. People connect through pain. For example, if you came up to me and said, "Hey, Rod, how you doing?" I said, "Oh my God, I'm freaking fantastic. Life is amazing. Oh, I can't even tell you how amazing life is right now." Most people would take a couple steps back and say, "Okay, he's off his freaking meds." Well, but if you came up and said, "Rod, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh shit, my back is killing me. I just lost $100,000 in the market. Woe is me." You put your arm around me and say, "Oh, I feel you, brother." See, we connect through pain, and you've got to be really careful. Now, I know if you're listening to Shawn, you're a leader. And right now, more than ever, the world needs freaking leaders. Don't get me started on this political crap and the fake news and everything else that's going on out there. But as a leader, you've got to pay attention to what you focus on, okay? Because whatever you focus on is going to get bigger. And if you're focused on that crap on the news, that's what's going to get bigger, and you're going to get wrapped up in it. So be very, very careful what you focus on. But which is another thing I'll talk about in a minute, because I'll just talk about it now. Focus is the most successful people on the planet are the ones that have the greatest focus, okay? Yeah. So focus is super critical towards your success. And I get excited about my 13 million downloads. Well, I listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and I think he gets that a week. I listen to Tim Ferriss on one side, and I listen to Joe Rogan on the other side, kind of quasi both sides of the aisle. I try to stay balanced. But Tim Ferriss interviews the best of the best in the different walks of life, the best athletes, Michael Phelps, actors, Jamie Foxx, Ed Norton, Hugh Jackman, Arnold, billionaires like Ray Dalio, CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. And he deconstructs their success. And I started to hear a pattern, Shawn. Most of them meditate. What does meditation enhance? Focus. Okay, so focus is a big one. Goals, you got to know what it is you want and why you want it. And then the next step is you've got to make a decision. And the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. If you're going to attack the island, you're going to burn your ships because you're taking their damn ships home. Okay. That's a decision. It's done. It's not a 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's not a dip in the toe in the water. It is freaking done. And when you make that decision, you're like a train on a track, and if you kind of quasi one toe in, one toe out, you're going to get knocked off track. And so decision is important. The next step would be to take a step. You got to take that first step. Okay. And, sometimes it can be the biggest step of your life, and it's the scariest. Especially for people that are analytical, that, get caught up in paralysis by analysis. And Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step in faith and the next step will be revealed. You can drive all the way across the country at night with your headlights only seeing about 50 feet in front of you, and you'll make it. Other people have made it. You might have some obstacles. It's the same way with your goals. It's the same way with our businesses, you and the STR and me and the multifamily. It's the same way, but you got to take that first step. Okay. And push through that fear. And then, a couple other quick points, and then you can fire away here. One is the next one is play to your strengths. Okay. Especially in my business, the multifamily business, because it's a team sport and you can't do it all. You just can't in my business. There's the analytical component. You got to underwrite deals. So you need somebody that's got good with that. There's the outgoing component because you got to build relationships with investors and brokers and sellers. So you've got that piece. There's the process driven component in the asset management piece, where after you buy an asset and you rent it out, and you hire a property management company, you've got to asset manage that management company. So there's a lot of different hats. And if you're playing to your strengths and you hire, align, or partner for your weaknesses, success is inevitable. And here's why that's a big deal. If you're playing to your strengths, first of all, you're going to love it because you're good at it. Okay. So, so work becomes play and you never work another day in your life. So that's number one. Number two is, you're going to be passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, then you're going to have the ability to influence people. And, this business life is about influence, and every business requires influence, whether you're doing short-term rentals or multifamily. And so, when you love what it is you do or the piece that you do, again, you're going to be passionate and you'll be able to influence people.
I'm just going to dive in and riff a little bit on some of the things you said, because it's so important, where we say the exact same thing. And like, I don't make any of this stuff up. Like I listen to guys like you. I listen to this, Ferris. I listen to Tony Robbins and Graziosi, and these guys that just all different walks of life. But the message is so congruent with everybody, right? It's like, understand where you're starting from, have a point you're going, understand why you're doing it, and then you have to have the capabilities to get there, right? And so we can't go anywhere unless you know where you're going. And the focus part is and this is what I think a lot of people get so wrong. If you ask, and I know you do this in your workshops and your trainings and everything else, because I do the same thing. When we focus, the very first part of our process that we take somebody through is the goal setting, is figuring out what are your property goals? What are your life goals? What do you want to do? Because we could all be following the same blueprint in the path, but our goals are different, and what our property goals are and what our strengths are, what we're attracted to is different. And so we go through this process of saying, okay, where do we want to go? Whenever I ask somebody what they don't want, I say, tell me what you don't want. They can give me a list 100 miles long. You ask them, okay, now tell me what you do want. Have you ever done that, Rod? And then they
sure. No, absolutely. It's like everybody knows what they don't want. Everybody knows the emotions they don't want. But it's when you try to figure out what you do want, that's where people struggle. And it's hard. And
it's to your point of saying, hey, I'm going to tell you all these successes I had. And everybody's like, okay, whatever, Rod. And you say, well, man, here's where I'm struggling. And they're like, yeah, man, I relate, brother. This is you and me both, right? Everybody wants to one up our disappointments, our successes. But that is the problem with the focus, right? We've got this amazing thing in the front of our brain called the prefrontal cortex and our reticular activating system, which is our spam filter. That job of our RAS is to take all this information that we're getting all day long, every day, and decide what's important. It decides what to let through. Well, if we're focusing on all of the things we don't want, guess what it lets through? It gets all those media messages out there, all the things that we're fed on a regular basis.
Even the crap on social,
it's all the social stuff. Right. And we say, just like a lot of people use the example of a vehicle with the RAS. If you buy a blue Honda, all of a sudden you see all the other blue Hondas out there. It's not that the blue Hondas were never there. Right. They were always there. But now your RAS, reticular activating system, says this is important to Shawn now. So I'm going to show him all these blue Hondas. The same is true with focus. You can't focus on what you don't want. You got to focus on what you do want. And your brain is going to filter in those things. You don't know how you're going to do it yet. Your job is not to figure out all the hows, right? There's a great book, Who Not How, right? To your point of the partner, find your strengths and understand.
Let me give you an example of the focus. I forgot to mention Mother Teresa, when she was alive, was asked if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace.
Yeah.
It's just a focus thing. I get
Exactly.
people to call me and say, how do I get out of student loan debt? I'm like, wrong question. How do you make so much freaking money that det's irrelevant?
It doesn't matter.
Again, what you focus on gets bigger.
Yeah.
So, and as it relates to the RAS, the reticular activating system, do your goals, but then I tell you, get pictures for your goals. I've got pictures on the walls around me, things that interest me now. Vision board, screensaver, on your phone. I'll show you something here. Do you put these on YouTube?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah, people will see this on YouTube.
This is my planner. This is my paper planner. In the back of this thing, I've got pictures that have been in here for 22 years, okay? First pictures are my gratitude pictures. My kids are 30 and 26. These are when they were young, because everything comes from gratitude. Yep. That's how you manifest. You call it prayer. You call it visualization, manifestation. This is how you do it. Starts with gratitude. Yep. But then I've got the things that I wanted. I built this $8 million house on the beach, which was unthinkable when I was 18, but I made it happen. And it looks just like this top picture before I built it. Now, I'm going to give you some examples here. I'm not bragging. Okay. Please know.
No,
I just want to inspire you to what's possible. This is
great. Yep.
Yeah. And I live in a compound now. I lost that house and all the craziness. Okay. And 08 and the divorce and all kinds of things, but I live in a compound now. I've got 6 buildings. I got a big main house, 2-bedroom guest house on the water, and exercise facility that's off the hook, media building with the video studio because we went virtual in a lot of my boot camps now. Yep. And what's crazy is you look at those bottom pictures. Those of you listening can't see it, but you see the white stone walls in those pictures?
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
That's my backyard. See the bad stone wall? That's my, and what's really funny is because God's got a sense of humor, the old house the house I built on the beach is right across the bay from me. I can see it every day when I go out there. It's hilarious. But then I've got, stupid shit that I thought was important. Watches. I've got a few $100,000 worth of watches. I do still love that. I'll have to admit that. But I got a Lamborghini, which I thought was impossible. The Rolls Royce, the Bentley, all the stuff that I thought was important at one time that I got because I had pictures. So get the pictures, do the vision boards. And, I may have lost some of you analytical ones on this, but I'm here to tell you, big mistake, because this is how you get this stuff. This is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. Focusing on what I wanted, putting it in front of me, thinking about it regularly, triggering the RAS so that my brain was pointed in the direction of things that were going to give me this stuff. And again, I've got different goals now, much different. You can see on the wall behind me, I'm about adding value. There's some of the hundreds of thank you cards I've gotten from students. You can't even see the walls covered behind my green screen here. And so I've got a whole different outlook on what's important to me now, but this stuff freaking works.
It does work. And it's why all the greats talk about it. There's Jenna Kutcher. One time I was listening to her and she said, everybody thinks this is this foo-foo, vision board, all this stuff, the secret stuff. That stuff is brilliant, by the way.
Hey, when The Secret came out, let me share something. When I was 18, I had a 4-door Granada, piece of crap, bench seat in the front. And I got a picture and the guy I dated, his daughter had 2 Corvettes and let me drive one. And I got a picture out of a magazine of a Corvette before you could spell internet and it hadn't even been thought of yet. And I put it on the visor of this bone ugly Granada. Within a year or two, I had that Corvette. Then I did the same thing with, this is when the TV show Magnum PI was out. It was an actor named Tom Selleck. He's still around, but he was a detective in Hawaii and he drove a Ferrari 308. It's the first time I'd ever seen an exotic. I'm like, oh my God, that's freaking amazing. I got a picture of that actual car, put it on the visor of my Corvette. Within a year or two, I had a Maserati, looked just like it. And then the next thing was the Lamborghini. I got a picture of that, put it on the visor of so this shit works, guys. I'm just telling you. Okay.
It does work.
Yeah.
And now it's not that you can just have these visions, because all you're doing is you're activating the brain to say, this is possible. The brain doesn't know positive, negative, anything like that. It says, okay, this is important to Shawn. This is important to Rod. And I'm going to do whatever I can to help them be able to take what's important to them and put it in their life. And now, does it mean you have to do the work? Hell yes, you have to do the work.
Better believe it. You can't just sit there. Can't just sit there and meditate the stuff.
No, meditation's not going to.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just going to show up in your lap. Now all of a sudden you say, okay, I have to now develop these capabilities, because your best capabilities got you where you're at right now. We have to develop these new capabilities. And that's why where the focus goes, now all of a sudden we're going to say, okay, our brain and the universe is going to say, okay, I'm going to show you and put in front of you these opportunities to help you develop these capabilities. Love that you brought up the gratitude part of it. I do a gratitude prayer every morning, every night. It's the exact same. My goals are in there. I say exactly what I'm thankful for. So my focus is every morning, I start the day this way and I end the day this way. And whether you want to do it as a prayer, whether you want to do affirmations, however you want to do it, it's the same, right?
Same thing. I sit on this recliner right here, do the same thing. I got my vision boards. You can kind of see them on the floor there. I sit there, I do gratitude for my supermodel, beautiful wife, more beautiful on the inside than the outside, my kids, my coaching students, my foundation. And then I do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'll get emotional being grateful for something I don't even have yet. Yeah. And I know I lost a few more of you analytical ones, but big mistake, because this is how I had it and this is how I got it back. So
it is a big mistake. And this, I love this conversation. We don't script these out. We just said, hey, we're going to hit roll and we're going to have a conversation, but this stuff is so important and we don't talk about it enough.
It's 80 to 90% of it. It really is. And especially in what's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
Focus is so important. Okay. And so, again, you're a leader. You wouldn't be here listening or watching if you weren't a leader. And, and fear is coming. Okay. I tell you, Robert Kiyosaki says it's going to be a huge crash, bigger than 08 and 9. Warren Buffett says it's going to be huge. Elon Musk says it's going to be big, and so is it a time to get scared? No, it's a time to get super freaking excited. In 2008 and 9, I was hiding under a rock for a while. And, I got crushed by that wave. I'm surfing the wave this freaking time. Okay. And I'm in a lot of cash. And so, we could, if you'd like to talk about, some strategies to maximize and thrive through this, I think that'd be a lot of fun if you want.
I think it would be a lot of fun. I think it's really timely for a lot of people to hear right now, because a lot of people are wondering what to do, and sitting around in fear is not what you want to do.
No, so now is the time for innovation. It's the time to pivot. It's the time to be creative. When COVID hit, I was supposed to have 800 people at a boot camp in Orlando in May of 2020, and I had sold hundreds of tickets. I'm like, holy shit, what are we going to do? If you go to multifamilyvirtualbootcamp.com, you'll see Rod's happy ass on his phone recording the video. In fact, it's still there. I didn't even take it down. I don't know what I did with my phone, pull my phone up. But the point is, there it is. But I record. I mean, I pivoted instantly. I said, man, team, we got to do something right now. So in the backyard you see behind me here, I've recorded that video on that website. And so I had to innovate. I had to pivot. And I've had to do that many times in my career. And you may have to as well, you listening, if you're in an industry that's going to get impacted by what's coming. But additionally, there is freaking opportunity coming. I mean, incredible opportunity is coming. And I mean, if it's half as bad as they say it is going to be incredible opportunity. And I can tell you, in my world, in the multifamily real estate space, what's incredible and painful at the same time is a lot of people there was a lot of greed these last couple of years. I mean, I was scratching my head when I saw what some of these properties sold for that we bid on. It was like, are you freaking kidding me? Was it free money? I mean, so those investors are going to get in big trouble, and those operators that put those deals together are going to have problems. And a lot of them use bridge debt, which is the, temporary debt, very dangerous, adjustable rate, very onerous debt. And I know a lot of that stuff's going into receivership. So there's going to be opportunity. There's going to be opportunity in the single family space for the STR business for sure. But now is the time. If you haven't taken advantage of Shawn's material, or if you're interested in multifamily, take advantage of mine. Now is the time, because when you're in the thick of it and the blood's running in the streets, it's going to be too late. You've got to build the relationships now. You got to get up to speed now. You've got to, understand the business now so that you can capitalize on it. And, I was telling you this before we started recording, Shawn, is, I really believe that certainly on the vacation side, short-term rentals are going to do really well, because I've been reading, economists are saying that the service industry should do really well through this. Okay. That people are moving, they're not going to spend the money on stuff, but they're going to spend the money on experiences. Yeah. And so, because they've been so cooped up, COVID gave you guys a gift. In my multifamily space, I know there's going to be deals. And huge, can I mention my boot camp real quick? Do you mind?
Oh, please. Yeah, okay, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll put links in the show notes as well. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, if you're interested in multifamily, get your butt to Denver, July 29th, 30th, and 31st, 3 days. You can come for $197. Tickets price are going to $700 in a few days. You can come for $197. But here's how you get the ticket. You text Rod to 72345. So that's my name, Rod, to 72345. And remember the code RODFRIEND. Now, if you forget, just DM me on any social channel and I'll hook you up and just mention that you heard me on Shawn's podcast. But it's 3 days of training. It's not a sales pitch. It is drinking through a fire hose about this business. But this is the only live event I do all year. And Denver's United's hub, so you can fly there nonstop from anywhere fairly reasonably. And I got the hotels around there are cheap. It's a no-brainer if you're interested in my business at all. So and you can go to rodindenver.com too. That's the website.
Yeah. And which, by the way, the multifamily, like, you'll never hear me talk bad about most real estate asset classes. There's pros and cons for everybody to get into them. You have to make sure they fit. Multifamily, you guys, the markets have been setting themselves up with the rising cost of home ownership, with the rising cost or the interest rates going up. Owning multifamily properties is, I mean, people have to live somewhere. People have got to have homes. And a lot of people, there's a huge segment of the market that homeownership is unaffordable for now, more than any time in history, right?
Right. And we're becoming a renter nation anyway.
Exactly.
Millennials, they don't want to own yet. But I got to tell you, as far as asset classes, when COVID hit, retail didn't get money, office didn't get money, warehouse didn't get money, but multifamily, we got hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent relief money from tenants that needed help and got to get through it. Okay. And so, people have to have a place to live. And, it's and the other thing about multifamily, and then I'll stop bragging on it. But within 3 years of the 2008 crash, rents exceeded 2006 levels. That's how fast it bounced back. Quick. So, it's a really great asset class. And, like your STRs, you're building cash flow. The name of my podcast is Lifetime Cash Flow, because that's what it's about, man. If you're flipping and wholesaling, you've got a job. We talked about this before we started recording. Shawn, you did that. I did it too for a while, and it's a job. You buy assets that cash flow. At some point, you don't work anymore, man.
Well, and that's what I always remind people, because we're in the short-term rental space, but we're in the long-term investment space.
That's right.
We're long-term. We're interested in long-term investments that cash flow. You have to underwrite for cash flow. And so, and I'd love to. So I've been telling people, like, to prepare for this, and this goes right into what you're talking about. Prepare for what's going on right now. There's really 5 things that I keep telling people they need to do. 1, they need to start sharpening their axe, right? They need to invest in themselves, in both the time and money, to learn everything they can about the game they decide they're going to play.
As fast as possible. As fast as possible.
You're never going to recognize opportunities. You're going to be running scared, and you have to have the knowledge. You have to bridge that knowledge gap. Well, I've always been a believer that mentors, coaches are the fastest way to compress that gap, that time gap, right? And so, 1, you got to do that. You got to sharpen the axe. Number 2,
I have 4 coaches right now.
I'm the same. I actually, it's funny you say 4. I have 4 mentors that I pay, and
right now I just paid $10,000 today, actually, to somebody for that. But anyway, keep going.
That's awesome.
Number 2?
2 is you got to take massive action. Like, every day, outwork everybody else out there. People are going to, these are the separation seasons that we don't get maybe once or twice in our lifetimes.
Right.
You understand the game you're playing, and you take massive action while everybody else is sitting on the sideline. All of a sudden, you start separating where you're at.
And you build incredible market share. I mean, some of the largest companies in history were built in what's coming. And some people are saying it could be the greatest transfer of wealth in our history. But if you wait, you're going to miss it. Just that simple. And you could literally set yourself up for life. Your kids, their kids, their kids, and their kids. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating at all. Okay?
Totally agree. And you can hear it in our voices, guys, that we're excited about this. It's not that we're excited that anybody's going to get hurt. Nobody wants that. But we know that human nature is, a lot of people are going to not do those first 2 things. They're not going to learn the game they're playing. They're not going to take massive action. Number 3, stop spending on anything that doesn't increase your income.
We're cutting off all spending, getting lean and mean right now. Yeah.
And the reason for that is, and most people don't understand this, is we're not going to cut off spending on consumer items and things like that. It's not that we're worried about that we're not going to have it. I want to be in a position to take advantage of the opportunities when they come up for us.
Now, here's the thing, though. Real estate takes money. And I'm sure you teach this as well, but it doesn't have to be your own money either.
Yep.
So you want to conserve your own cash, but you also want to build and I'm going to teach this at the boot camp, how to build relationships with people so they're not fearful when the blood is literally running in the streets and the media is saying it's going to be crappy. The real estate's going to be crappy for 10 years because that's what happened in 08 and 9. That's what they do. But so it's not just your own money. Yes, you need to get in much cash as possible, get as liquid as you can, get lean and mean, but you also need to have access to cash. And so, I want to mention that as well.
100%. And then that's what it kind of goes into that. My fifth concept, but the fourth one is do whatever it takes to create multiple streams of income through properties, businesses, whatever you've got. Make sure you've got multiple streams of income coming in. And that could be diversifying your portfolio, having multiple buildings, multifamily, whatever it is. But then that fifth, what you're talking about, learn the concept of who, not how. Start building those relationships. Understand how to compress time with some mentors. Build the relationships with the partners that you might have. Like what you mentioned earlier, Rod, is, play to your strengths. We're the exact same in the short-term rental game. We don't do this alone. It's very unlikely. Like in the single-family rental game, it couldn't be more different than the short-term rental game. We have the exact same asset managers on the back end. We have finance people that they treat these like commercial properties. You need to start building those relationships, and you do what you do really well, and then start building those relationships and learn who, not how. Because a lot of times what happens is we always ask ourselves, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And we fall into this pit of procrastination because we don't know how to do everything we need to do to get this done. When you can build those relationships and say, okay, I don't know how to do this, but who's really good at this, right? If I'm diving into multifamily space, I'm not going to go try to figure this out on my own. I'm calling Rod and I'm saying, hey, and Rod's going to introduce me to his professional network and say, hey, listen, Rod doesn't do all this on his own either. Same when somebody comes to me for short-term rentals. I'm going to teach them our process and the path that we're following. And then I'm going to say, okay, but by the way, these are the lenders I use for these types of deals. These are the management companies I use for this type of a deal in this area, all these different things. So use that concept of who, not how.
I'd like to mention one other thing because we talked about goals. It'll take me just a minute. Actually, before I talk about goals, I want to talk about something else. So when I immigrated this country, I didn't speak English. And I got thrown into school and I found out what bullies were for the first time. So I got my butt kicked on it occasionally and I hadn't learned how to fight back yet. And then my mom, proud Dutch woman that she is, thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in wooden shoes and those leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest.
They fit right in, right?
Again. Later hosen, got my ass kicked again. Then, some of the bullies lived on my street and they chased me home and she chased them off with a fly swatter. Next day, ass kicking again. Well, I came up with this belief system that I wasn't good enough. Okay. And this ties into what I wanted to share, and a lot of people have these limiting belief systems. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not young enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. There's a reason the acronym for belief systems is BS, because 99.9% of them are BS, but you got to recognize them and you got to drag them out into the daylight and look at them with your adult rational mind to recognize that they're crap and you don't need to be living under that, that weight any longer. But the story I wanted to share is, I talked about that house I built on the beach. I mean, this place was magnificent. I owned the beach on one side. I had my boats on the backside. It was called a Gulf to Bay, sliced through an island. I mean, elevator, wine cellar, giant waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the waterfall to get in the pool, spiral staircase up to the middle of the house. I'll land the plane with this. On the second floor, there was an aquarium that wrapped around the staircase, cost me almost $200,000. So this gives you an idea of the house. So I worked for this thing for 20, and this ties into goals, which is why I'm bringing it up. I worked for this thing for 20 years. Okay. 2 months after I moved in, 20 years, 2 months, 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, which is really what it was. It proved the world I was good enough. Okay. And I got depressed, and I don't mean just a little depressed. I mean, I was really depressed. I'm like, what the hell? I've just achieved success like times 1,000. I had the Maserati in the garage, a couple of Mercedes, boats, jet skis, all the crap. And my family was a beautiful family inside sleeping. What I realized were there's several things happening. Number one is it's never about the goal. You need the goal to propel you and create that burning desire. But, like they say, the happiest days of a boat owner's life, the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat, you need them. But happiness comes from progress and growth. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. I didn't have a vision for the future. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But the biggest thing was I'd been totally focused on me. Show the world I'm good enough. Show the world I matter. Rod. That's the year I got exposed to Tony Robbins, and I went and saw him live and really was blown away by the content, and spent 20 years actually following him around the planet. Highly recommend you go see him if you have a chance while he's still talking. Mm-hmm. But I found out that he fed families for the holidays. And I'm like, what a concept. Do something for someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I had to be 40 to get that memo. But I went back home and I called my brother in Denver because I was visiting him and my family there for Thanksgiving. I said, let's feed 5 families. And so we went to his church and found 5 families that really needed help. Third family changed my life. We bought frozen turkeys and toys for the kids and big boxes of food. And this third family was this woman that lived in this crappy 1-bedroom with 5 kids. She came out, she saw the food and the toys, and she started crying. Her kids came out, 2 of the older ones started crying, and I started crying. And there's a message in this, so please know what I'm going to share is not ego, okay? In the last 22 years, we've fed 130,000 children for the holidays here in Sarasota. We've done tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies to local kids who don't have the basic supplies for school. We've done tens of thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for officers to keep in their vehicles. If they encounter a child that's been traumatized, they can comfort the child. Here's the message. We've been taught to achieve to be happy. Like, we can't be happy until we've achieved, okay? Now, if you give back in any fashion, you are happily achieving. And I know it's a play on words, but it's an important one. Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Yep. Achievement is a science. You want to learn STR, get with Shawn. You want to learn multifamily, get with Rod. We will give you the blueprint. You just got to go take massive freaking action and do it. It's a science. There's a blueprint, there's a map. You just got to go do it. But fulfillment is an art, okay? And you've got to figure out what juices you. For me, it's kids. Maybe for you, it's the environment or animals or the elderly, whatever. And give back right now. And I know some of you are going, yeah, I'll do it when I have money. Yeah, you're rich. You can do whatever you want. No, do it right freaking now. And I don't care if you haven't got a pot to piss in. Do it right now. Why? Because you'll be happily achieving. You'll be fulfilled and the money will come faster. Yes. That's just the way the world works. That's the way God works. Whatever you believe, you get it back 100-fold, but do it right now. Anyway, I just wanted to leave with that.
That I love it. And I know you've already heard the story, but a huge turning point in my life when I was having a hard time was when I heard Tony Robbins talk about his friend, Robin Williams. And he talked about how success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And, a guy who had great success, Robin Williams, one of the funniest guys around, and all of a sudden he takes his own life. And he said he lived a successful life. And Tony always says that the science of success is the easy part, right? That's the part that there's a path to follow for any road you're running down.
That's it. You just got to go do it.
Yeah, it's just rolling up your sleeves and doing it. But I never, and I listened to that story at the time, and I was trying to kind of figure out my way and why I did things. I had just had my kids. And before I was this cocky freewheeling, guy that was investing and spending all kinds of money.
Same.
And you just, I realized, and it was like, it hit you like a ton of bricks when you realize that. And to your point, I don't know how many people I've talked to, and I know you're the same. I remember the day my goal was, okay, I want to have $1 million in the bank. I remember the day I had $1 million in the bank. And do you think, was it like, it was like, it's like, there was nothing.
Big deal.
It was a big deal. Exactly. The goal was like, okay, I want to have $1 million and everything's going to be different when I have $1 million in the bank. I have $1 million in the bank. And I said, it was just like any other day.
But you need the goals still.
You have these targets, but the bar is always rising. The goal is growth, right? The goal is to say, okay, I'm going to have this purpose. Really, sometimes I like, we all have a different why. We all have something that drives us, which I think a why and our purpose is something different. I think our purpose is universally the same. We should want to live the best possible version of ourselves and inspire other people to do the same. That's what our purpose on this earth should be, to go live the best possible version. Our why and what fulfills us can be different, right? And so, but without that, it starts with giving, and you can go help somebody because there is always somebody.
Yeah. If you're listening and you haven't got any money, go donate some time.
Exactly.
Do something that juices you, because you'll be fulfilled. You'll be happy. I've interviewed some super, super successful, guy with 20,000 units on my podcast. And I could tell he was like I was before I evolved and realized what life is really about. And I felt sorry for him because he may be financially successful, but he's not fulfilled.
He's not fulfilled.
No,
and you can tell, right? And
I can see it because it was me. It's easy to see.
I'll tell you, and I would argue that the time is like time is the most valuable asset that any of us have and resource any of us have. And if you can give time to somebody, that is the most valuable thing you could give to somebody.
Couldn't agree more.
It's easy to write a check. It's hard to give that time. And so if you're saying, well, I don't have $1 million in the bank, I don't have the ability to go do that. That's not what the conversation's about here. It's saying, go give back, give
anything. Yeah. No, I know you get feedback from your podcast. I get feedback from my podcast. It's the greatest gift ever, but anyway. I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Awesome, man.
I'm bumping up against a hard stop here.
I am too. And so let's do this, Rod. I know how valuable your time is as well. This has been a great conversation. It flew by for me. I really appreciate you joining us. So we've got one more time. Tell everybody where they can find out about your stuff.
Yeah, if you can't come to my boot camp the end of July, but first of all, let me remind you how you can. Text ROD to 72345. Or go to rodindenver.com and just remember the code RODFRIEND is one word. And again, if you have any problem, just DM me. I'm on every social channel, very, very responsive. Within 24 hours, you'll hear back from me. But if you can't make it and you want to do that goal setting workshop, I did it on New Year's Day this year. I do it every year around the 1st, and it's in rodslinks.com. Rods plural, links plural.com. That's my link tree. I've got a ton of free stuff there, books and resources. And my goal setting workshop is there with music, professionally done, a guide you can download. Do it with your spouse. Do it with your kids. People spend more time planning a freaking birthday party than they do designing their lives. This is designing your life. So take that gift. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Just go do that goal setting workshop. I promise you'll be glad you did. Rod's Link's got all sorts of free stuff. You can just go there. It's got my website and it's got the bootcamp site and everything there as well. So anyway, thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely. But I really appreciate you joining us. You guys, I know if you got even half as much out of this as I did, go share it with somebody you think that could use this and apply this in their own lives. Those likes and reviews on our show and subscribes really help us. And so go to Rod's stuff, go listen to his. You can tell just from this hour that we spent how great this stuff is. Go subscribe to his channel as well. And I'm looking forward to that goals worksheet and workshop that you did. And so we appreciate it. Guys, go share it, like it, subscribe, do what you do to keep spreading the word. And do me a favor, as always, go pick one thing you can do today to start building that life that you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website? Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodacy.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.